I'm Benito Martinez, 32, standing alone in my empty bakery on opening night. The display cases still full of untouched pastries, colorful decorations hanging limply overhead. I check my phone for the 20th time. No messages from Dad or Mom, not even Amelia. After years of dreaming and 6 grueling months of work, Sweet Heritage's grand opening has come and gone without a single family member present. Meanwhile, across town, my sister's promotion party is packed with relatives. My phone buzzes. Dad, we need to discuss the bakery. If you've ever been abandoned by family on your most important day, hit like and subscribe. Tell me where you're watching from. Misery loves company, and this story's just beginning. My earliest memories are filled with the scent of cinnamon and warm dough. I was 5 when my grandfather Alberto first lifted me onto a kitchen stool, his weathered hands guiding mine as we kneaded bread together. "Mijo," he'd say, in his thick accent, "baking is in our blood. My father taught me, his father taught him, and now I teach you." Grandpa Alberto had immigrated from Oaxaca, Mexico in his 20s, bringing with him generations of baking wisdom. While other kids played video games, I spent weekends learning how to make perfect conchas, the sweet bread with shell-like toppings that were his specialty. He taught me to feel the dough rather than just follow recipes. The dough speaks to you, Benito. You must learn to listen. Those lessons in our small Chicago apartment kitchen became sacred to me. The careful folding of puff pastry, the precise temperature needed for caramelizing sugar, the patient waiting as bread rose. These moments formed the foundation of my dream. My sister Amelia, 4 years younger, had no interest in baking. While I dusted flour from my clothes, she sat at the dining table with neat rows of books and flashcards. By middle school, she was winning debate competitions and earning perfect grades. My father Miguel never tried to hide his preference for her path. "Look at your sister," he'd say during dinner, proudly displaying her report card. "Straight A's again, she'll run a company someday." When it was my turn to share, I'd mention a new recipe I'd mastered, and Dad's smile would flatten. "That's nice, son. Hobbies are important too." But baking was never just a hobby to me. It was my calling, my heritage, my future, even if my father couldn't see it. My mother, Isabella, tried to bridge the divide. "Miguel, taste the churros Benito made. They're better than your restaurants." She meant well, but her support always came with a side of apology, as though my passion needed justification. Dad had found success with his Mexican restaurant Martinez Grill, a neighborhood staple serving Americanized versions of traditional dishes. He'd started as a dishwasher and worked his way to ownership. A true American dream story he never tired of telling. But when I expressed wanting my own food business, he'd shake his head. "Restaurants are real businesses, Benito. Bakeries are frivolous. People need meals, not pastries." Throughout high school, I worked at local bakeries after classes, learning different styles and techniques. While Amelia joined prestigious academic clubs, I saved every dollar from my minimum wage jobs. I wasn't just building skills. I was building a fund for my future bakery. When I was 17, I entered a citywide young bakers competition. After weeks of practice, I created a fusion pastry combining my grandfather's traditional concha recipe with a French croissant technique. The morning of the competition, I asked my parents if they'd attend. "Oh, Mijo," Mom said, genuinely apologetic. "Amelia has her debate finals today. You understand, right? This is her chance at a scholarship." I understood perfectly. I went alone, won second place, and celebrated with a solitary bus ride home, my silver medal tucked in my backpack where no one would ask about it. Grandpa Alberto was different. "You have magic in your hands," he'd tell me. "Don't let anyone convince you your dreams are small." When I turned 24, Grandpa fell ill. During his final weeks, he made me promise to pursue my bakery. "Life is too short to live someone else's dream," he wheezed from his hospital bed. After he passed, his will revealed he'd left me $42,000, his entire life savings. "For the bakery," his note read, "so a piece of me will be there when you open." I could have launched immediately, but that felt like rushing. Instead, I spent the next 6 years honing my craft, working under renowned bakers, including an apprenticeship with James Beard Award winner Teresa Alvarado. I added formal business classes at community college, built a detailed business plan, and researched locations exhaustively. Throughout those years, Sunday family dinners remained an exercise in invisibility. Dad would toast Amelia's internship at a marketing firm, her graduation with honors, her entry-level position at Thompson Media Group. My updates about mastering laminated dough techniques or completing my business certification were met with polite nods before conversation shifted back to Amelia's trajectory. "When are you going to get a real career?" Dad would ask periodically. "You're 30 now, son. Playtime is over." Mom would squeeze my hand under the table, her silent way of saying "I believe in you" without contradicting her husband. It wasn't enough, but it was something. The final straw came at Amelia's 26th birthday dinner. As we finished our meal, she announced she'd been selected for a management training program at her firm. To Amelia, Dad raised his glass, always reaching higher. "This is what success looks like, everyone." I just signed the lease on my bakery space that morning. When I tried to share my news, Dad cut me off. "Let's keep tonight about your sister's achievements, son. Your little bakery project can wait." Little bakery project. 4 words that crystallized 20 years of dismissal. I excused myself early and drove to my empty storefront, sitting alone in the dark, recommitting to proving him wrong. Finding the perfect location took months. I needed an area with foot traffic but affordable rent, diverse enough to appreciate my Mexican-American fusion concept, yet established enough to support a new business. I finally found it in Chicago's Northwest Side, a former bookstore with large windows and good bones nestled between a coffee shop and a vintage clothing store. The landlord, Harold Wilson, was a 62-year-old former contractor, with skepticism etched into the lines around his eyes. He crossed his arms as I walked him through my business plan during our first meeting. "Another food place, huh?" he said, scanning the documents. "I've seen dozens fail. What makes you different?" I handed him a box of pastries I'd baked that morning. His eyebrows raised slightly as he bit into a chocolate cinnamon concha. "Well," he said, mouth still full, "at least you can bake. But passion doesn't pay rent." "No, sir," I agreed. "But a solid business plan and guaranteed foot traffic do." I showed him my market research, projected financials, and marketing strategy. 2 weeks and 3 meetings later, he handed me the keys. "Don't make me regret this, Martinez." With locations secured, I needed funding. Despite my substantial savings from Grandpa's inheritance, and years of work, renovations and equipment would require more. I approached 7 banks with my business plan projections and personal financial history. 6 rejected me outright. "The restaurant industry has an 80% failure rate," one loan officer explained mechanically. "Bakeries fare even worse." The 7th bank, Chicago Community Credit Union, granted me a meeting with their manager, Richard Thompson, a stern man who didn't smile once during our hour together. "Your financials are actually quite good," he admitted reluctantly, "but you have no experience running a business." "I've worked in 6 bakeries over 12 years," I countered. "I've managed 3 of them. I've taken business courses and—" "Working in a business isn't the same as running one," he interrupted. I left without a loan. 2 weeks later, I returned with letters of recommendation from every baker I'd worked under, including Teresa Alvarado, whose name he recognized. I also brought a revised business plan with even more conservative projections. And pastries. Definitely brought pastries. Thompson called the next day with approval for a smaller loan than I'd requested at a higher interest rate. It wasn't ideal, but it was enough to move forward. Renovations became my life for the next 3 months. I took on as much of the work as possible, painting walls the warm terracotta color of my grandfather's kitchen, refinishing the original hardwood floors, building display cases with wood salvaged from the bookstore's old shelves. My best friend, Marcus Johnson, spent every weekend helping me despite having a demanding job as a teacher. "Man, you've talked about this place since we were 15, he said, wiping sweat as we installed light fixtures. "I wouldn't miss being part of making it real." The kitchen equipment nearly broke me financially. Commercial ovens, mixers, refrigeration units, each essential item carried a breathtaking price tag. I found some second-hand, refurbished others, and splurged only on the items most crucial to quality. While the physical space took shape, I refined my menu. Traditional Mexican pan dulce would be my foundation, concas orejas mantecadas, but with innovative twists. I developed a sourdough concha using wild yeasts I'd been cultivating for years. My trois leches croissant combined French lamination techniques with the beloved Mexican cake flavors. The signature item, though, would be Abuelo's concha, a perfect traditional concha, made exactly as my grandfather had taught me, filled with cinnamon chocolate ganache, and topped with a delicate sugar design in the shape of a music. Note, Grandpa Alberto had always hummed while baking. I sourced ingredients, relentlessly finding local farmers for eggs and dairy specialty importers for Mexican chocolate and vanilla organic flour mills for the perfect proteins and textures. Each component had to meet my standards while keeping costs manageable, a delicate balance that consumed my evenings after physical labor on the space. 2 weeks before opening, the health inspector nearly failed me over minor sink placement issues and ventilation concerns. I spent 3 sleepless nights reworking the kitchen layout and another chunk of savings on ventilation adjustments. The follow-up inspection passed, but just barely, with warnings about keeping things up to code. The final days were a blur of systems setup, point-of-sale technology, website launching, social media accounts, creation staff training. I could only afford 2 part-time employees to start, and endless baking tests to ensure consistency. In the new ovens. The night before opening, I hand-wrote invitations to my family. You are cordially invited to the grand opening of Sweet Heritage Bakery. After years of dreaming and months of work, I'm finally opening my doors. Your presence would mean the world to me. Special family reception, after closing, food and drinks provided. I delivered them personally, watching Mom's eyes tear up as she promised, "We'll be there, mijo. I'm so proud." Dad scanned the invitation with a frown. "Tomorrow, Amelia has a big presentation at work. We need to be available if she needs support." "It's just for an evening, Dad," I said. "I'm only asking for a few hours." He set the invitation aside without confirming. "It's just a bakery, son. Not like it's a real business with stakeholders and corporate strategy." The words stung, but I was beyond seeking his approval. "I hope to see you there," I said simply, and left to make final preparations, telling myself that even if they didn't show, this milestone was mine to celebrate. I spent that night in the bakery preparing doughs that needed slow fermentation and setting up the final decorations. As dawn broke, I looked around at the space that had transformed from empty shell to warm, inviting bakery. The glass cases waited for pastries. The coffee was ready to brew. The sign outside proudly displayed, "Sweet Heritage Bakery. Grand opening today." Everything was perfect. Everything was ready. Everything except my family's support. Opening morning arrived with perfect spring weather, gentle sunshine streaming through the windows, highlighting the warm colors of the bakery walls and making the display cases gleam. I'd been up since 3 a.m. baking, ensuring every pastry was perfect. Trays of golden conchas, flaky orejas, buttery croissants, and colorful macarons filled the cases. The scent of cinnamon chocolate and freshly baked bread created an atmosphere that felt like a warm embrace. At 5 minutes to opening, I straightened my crisp, white chef's coat, adjusted the Sweet Heritage Bakery sign to perfectly center in the window, and took a deep breath. This was it, the culmination of decades of dreams. "We're going to rock this," said Zoe, the part-time barista I'd hired. She was a culinary student who appreciated the artistry in my pastries. At exactly 7 a.m., I unlocked the doors. For 15 anxious minutes, the bakery remained empty. Then a young couple wandered in, drawn by the aroma. "Something smells amazing," the woman said, approaching the counter. They ordered coffee and conchas, then sat by the window. I watched nervously as they took their first bites. "Oh my God," the man exclaimed, eyes widening. "This is incredible." A small triumph, but it filled me with relief. Soon a trickle of neighborhood residents began arriving, curious locals wanting to check out the new business. By 9 a.m. we had a steady stream of customers, many leaving with boxes of pastries and promises to return. Between serving customers, I checked my phone repeatedly. No messages from family. I sent a quick text to Mom. "Great turnout so far. Hope to see you all soon." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally. "So happy for you, Mijo. Might be a bit late. Helping with something for Amelia." My stomach tightened, but I forced a smile for the next customer. By noon, we'd sold nearly half our inventory, far better than I'd projected. During a brief lull, I called my sister. "Hey, Benito, can't really talk," Amelia answered, her voice echoing as if she was in a large space. "Just checking if you're coming to the opening today. We close at 7, but the family reception—" "Oh, I was going to call you," she interrupted. "I got amazing news this morning. They're promoting me to Marketing Director Youngest in company history." "That's great," I said, genuinely happy for her despite the timing. "Congratulations. Maybe we can celebrate at the bakery tonight." "Actually," her voice lowered, "Dad's throwing together a celebration dinner at the restaurant. Everyone's already here helping set up. You'll come right after your thing closes." My thing. My grand opening had been reduced to my thing. "I can't close early, Amelia. It's my opening day." "But this is huge. Benito Director at 28. Dad's called everyone. Aunts, uncles, cousins. Even Grandma Teresa is coming from Detroit." My grandmother was traveling from another state for Amelia's impromptu celebration but couldn't cross town for my grand opening, an event planned months in advance with invitations delivered personally. "I'm sorry," I said stiffly. "I can't make it." "Seriously, you're choosing your bakery over family." "You're all choosing Amelia's promotion over family," I countered. "My invitation went out weeks ago." A long pause followed. "Dad says you're being selfish," she finally said. "This is my career, Benito, my future. And this is mine." I ended the call as a new customer approached the counter. The afternoon brought another rush. Customers praised the pastries, took business cards, snapped photos for social media. Under different circumstances, I would have been ecstatic. Instead, each happy customer highlighted the absence of the people who should have cared most. At 4 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Your behavior is disappointing. Family prioritizes family. Close the shop and come support your sister." I didn't respond. By 6 p.m., the initial excitement had waned. The bakery stood empty as the evening commuter rush-headed home. I scrolled through Instagram masochistically, checking family members' accounts. There were dozens of photos from Amelia's celebration. Dad giving a toast, Mom hugging Amelia, cousins I hadn't seen in months, all gathered around a cake at Dad's restaurant. Not a single mention of my opening day. Not even a perfunctory, "Wish we could be in 2 places at once." At 6:30, Marcus arrived, his smile fading as he surveyed the empty bakery. "They didn't come, did they?" he asked quietly. I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "They're lost, man," he said, pulling me into a quick hug. "This place is amazing. The pastries are incredible. I'm proud of you, even if they can't see what you've built." We sat together as I closed out the register. The day's sales had actually exceeded my conservative projections, but the victory felt hollow. At 7, I locked the doors. The family reception I'd planned, with special pastries I'd created to honor each family member's tastes, would never happen. The champagne stayed corked. The personalized place cards remained in their envelope. Marcus helped me clean up, neither of us mentioning the elephant in the room. As he left, promising to return tomorrow, my phone buzzed again. "Dad, we need to discuss the bakery." I sat alone on the bakery floor, surrounded by my dream, made reality feeling more abandoned than I ever had before. The text wasn't an apology or congratulations. It was ominous, suggesting my achievement was a problem to be solved, rather than a success to be celebrated. In that moment alone, among the remnants of opening day, I understood that the hardest part of achieving your dreams isn't the work, the sacrifice, or even the risk. It's discovering who truly supports you when success finally arrives. I dragged myself out of bed at 3 a.m. the following morning, eyes puffy from a night of minimal sleep and maximum hurt. Every part of me wanted to pull the covers over my head and hide, but bakeries wait for no one's emotional crisis. Dough needed mixing, proofing, shaping, baking, regardless of whether my heart was intact or in pieces. By 6:30, fresh pastries filled the cases again. I moved mechanically, muscle memory guiding my hands through familiar motions while my mind replayed yesterday's abandonment in an endless, torturous loop. The bell above the door chimed at 7:15. My first customer of day 2. I plastered on a professional smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Hi, welcome to Sweet Heritage." "You must be Benito," the woman interrupted, extending her hand. "I'm Sophia Reynolds." My forced smile faltered. Sophia Reynolds was Chicago's most influential food blogger, known for making or breaking new restaurants with her detailed, unforgiving reviews. "I smelled your bakery. While walking by yesterday," she continued, already pulling out her camera. "Mind if I try a few things and take some photos?" For the next hour I watched nervously as she sampled nearly everything in the case, taking meticulous notes and asking detailed questions about ingredients and techniques. She seemed particularly taken with Abuelo's concha, closing her eyes as she tasted it. "The chocolate has fruity notes. Oaxacan?" she asked. "Yes, from a small producer my grandfather used to order from." She nodded approvingly. "You've created something special here, authentic yet innovative." "I'm impressed." She left with a box of pastries and a promise to post her review by evening. I barely had time to process the interaction before the morning rush began. Around 10, a young woman with dark-rimmed glasses and a messy bun ordered a café con leche and tres leches croissant. She sat by the window, occasionally glancing up from her laptop to study the bakery. After an hour, she approached the counter again. "Everything okay?" I asked, noting her half-eaten pastry. "More than okay," she smiled. "I'm Eliza Chen. I work in marketing, and I couldn't help but notice you seem a little off today. Rough opening." Something in her direct yet gentle approach broke through my professional veneer. Before I knew it, I'd shared a condensed version of yesterday's family no-show. "That's seriously cold," she said, genuine indignation in her voice. "For what it's worth, this place is amazing. Their loss." She left her card with a note scribbled on the back. "If you ever want marketing advice from someone who appreciates pastry genius, call me." Her kindness was a small bright spot in an otherwise dark day. I ignored 7 calls from Mom, 3 from Amelia, and 1 from Dad, focusing instead on customers and baking. Each family member left voicemails that ranged from Mom's tearful, "Please call us Mijo," to Dad's stern, "This childish silent treatment needs to stop." At 8 p.m., after closing, the bakery's front door rattled with insistent knocking. Dad stood outside, expression stormy. I considered pretending I hadn't heard, but eventually unlocked the door. Finally answering, he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He surveyed the bakery with critical eyes. "So this is what you chose over family?" "I didn't choose anything over family," I said evenly. "Family chose not to come to my grand opening. Amelia's promotion was unexpected. We had to celebrate properly. My opening was planned for months. You all knew the date." Dad's jaw tightened. "Let's not argue about yesterday. I'm here to talk about the future. I have a business proposition." He pulled out a chair at one of the small tables, gesturing for me to sit. I remained standing. "Martinez Grill is expanding," he continued, undeterred. "I'm opening a second location next year. I want you to sell this place and come work as head chef at the new restaurant. Good salary, profit-sharing, eventual partnership. A real opportunity, son." I stared at him, speechless. After everything, the absence, the dismissal, the complete lack of support, he was here asking me to abandon my dream for his expansion plans. "I'm not selling," I finally managed. "Don't be hasty. This bakery," he gestured dismissively around the room, "it's cute, but it's not sustainable. The restaurant industry is brutal. 90% fail in the first year." "You never believed this would work, did you?" The realization hit me with stunning clarity. Not once in all these years. "I believed you needed to be practical," he countered. "Restaurants are practical. People need to eat meals. Pastries are luxuries. So are restaurants above a certain price point," I shot back, "including Martinez Grill." His face darkened. "I've built something real, something lasting. I'm offering you a path to security." "I've built something real too," I said, gesturing around us. "Something that honors Grandpa Alberto's legacy. Something that combines our heritage with my vision." "Alberto was a dreamer," Dad scoffed. "Look where that got him. working maintenance jobs his whole life because his baking couldn't support a family. The casual cruelty toward my grandfather's memory ignited something in me. "Get out," I said quietly. "Excuse me." "Get out of my bakery. Now." He stood face flushed. "This is the choice you're making. Some half-baked dream over family." "No, Dad. You made the choice yesterday when you and everyone else decided my grand opening wasn't worth attending. You're making the choice now by disrespecting Grandpa's memory and my work." At the door, he turned back. "When this place inevitably fails, don't come asking for a job. You're either with the family business or you're on your own." The ultimatum hung in the air after he left. Within an hour, Mom called crying, begging me to apologize to keep the peace. "He means well, mijo," she insisted. "He just wants security for you." "No, Mom. He wants control. There's a difference." The next morning brought new challenges. A health inspector arrived, citing an anonymous complaint about sanitation issues. I knew immediately who had made the call. Vincent Romano, owner of Romano's Italian bakery 6 blocks away, who'd glared daggers at me when checking out the competition on opening day. The inspection found nothing, but the inspector warned, "We'll be watching closely. New businesses often cut corners." As if that wasn't enough, the bank called about a late fee on my loan payment, a payment I'd made on time with confirmation. It took an hour to sort out the computer error. By afternoon, landlord Harold stopped by ostensibly to check how opening week was going, but quickly mentioning rent might increase next quarter. Market adjustments, you know. The final blow came as I was preparing to close. Amelia walked in perfectly polished in her work attire, a stark contrast to my flour-dusted apron. "We need to talk," she said, sliding an elegant envelope across the counter. Inside was an invitation to her official promotion celebration, scheduled for the following Saturday evening during my busiest hours. "I want you there, Benito," she said. "Family should celebrate together." The irony was so thick I could have cut it and served it alongside my pastries. "Like family celebrated together for my opening?" I asked. She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "That was unfortunate timing." "It was a choice, Amelia, just like this invitation for Saturday night is a choice. You know bakeries do most business on weekends. You know I can't close early." "Can't or won't," she challenged. "Dad says." "I don't care what Dad says anymore," I interrupted. "For once in your life, can you form an opinion that isn't filtered through his approval?" Her face hardened. "At least I've earned his approval by making responsible choices." After she left, I locked up and sat in the darkened bakery, overwhelmed. Every member of my family had made their priorities clear. The bank was making administrative errors. The health inspector was watching closely. My landlord was hinting at increases. A competitor was actively working against me. For a brief, dark moment, I considered whether Dad was right, whether I should cut my losses, sell the bakery, and accept the safer path. Then my phone chimed with a notification. Sophia Reynolds had posted her review, complete with gorgeous photos and a glowing headline, "Sweet Heritage Bakery, where tradition meets innovation in perfect harmony." It was a lifeline thrown at exactly the right moment, reminding me why I'd started this journey in the first place. Sophia's review changed everything. By opening time the next day, a line stretched down the block. Locals eager to try what she described as possibly the best conchas in Chicago, and pastries that tell a story of cultural pride and culinary mastery. I'd prepared extra, anticipating some increase in business, but nothing like this. By 10 a.m. we'd sold out completely. I apologized to disappointed customers, promising more tomorrow, and closed to begin a second baking shift. As I worked, my phone repeatedly chimed with notifications, social media mentions, interview requests from local food publications, even an email from a morning TV show producer. Sophia's influence had created an instant buzz around Sweet Heritage. 3 days into this welcome chaos, Eliza returned, bypassing the long line with a coffee carrier and bag from a nearby deli. "Thought you might need sustenance," she said, setting them on the counter. "I read Sophia's review. Looks like you're a hit." Thanks to her, I admitted, gratefully accepting the coffee. "I'm completely overwhelmed. Want some help? Marketing's my job, but I worked as a barista through college." Without waiting for an answer, she tied on an apron and stepped behind the counter. For the next 4 hours, she managed the register and coffee orders while I focused on customers and keeping the cases filled. Her efficiency and easy rapport with patrons transformed the chaotic rush into manageable waves. When the line finally dissipated, I collapsed onto a chair. "You're a lifesaver. Seriously." "Happy to help," she smiled. "But you need a real strategy, not just emergency assistance. Mind if I make some suggestions?" Over the next hour, Eliza outlined practical steps to handle the sudden growth, adjusting opening hours to allow more prep time, implementing a pre-order system for large orders, restructuring the menu to focus on high-margin items, while maintaining quality. Her ideas were practical, actionable, and showed genuine understanding of what made Sweet Heritage special. "Why are you doing this?" I finally asked. "You don't even know me." She shrugged. "I appreciate passion and talent. Both are rare enough to support when you find them." After a pause, she added, "Plus, your tres leches croissant changed my life, and I need regular access to them." That evening, while cleaning up, I found my grandfather's old recipe book in the office. Opening it randomly, a folded note fell out, one I'd never noticed before. In Grandpa Alberto's shaky handwriting, "Never let anyone steal your passion. It is your most valuable ingredient." The timing felt like more than coincidence. It felt like guidance. I decided then that I would not only fight to keep my bakery alive, I would make it thrive. The next week brought a flurry of activity. I hired 2 more part-time employees to handle the increased volume. Eliza stopped by regularly, now officially consulting on marketing strategy in exchange for pastries. With her guidance, I created an Instagram account showcasing the stories behind my creations, emphasizing the heritage and craftsmanship in each item. Marcus suggested hosting a small baking workshop to generate additional revenue and build community connection. The first session, teaching participants to make traditional conchas, sold out within hours of being announced. During one particularly busy morning, a familiar face appeared in line. Trevor Scott, my childhood friend who'd moved away after high school. "Benito Martinez," he exclaimed, pulling me into a hug over the counter. "I saw your bakery on Instagram and couldn't believe it. You actually did it, man." Trevor had become a business development consultant and quickly offered to introduce me to Chicago's local business network. "These connections will be invaluable," he explained. "Catering opportunities, wholesale accounts, collaborative events, it's all about who you know." Not everything improved, however. Vincent Romano stepped up his sabotage attempts, spreading rumors about unsanitary conditions and cheap ingredients to anyone who would listen. The situation came to a head when I caught him on my security camera placing a dead mouse by my back door just before another anonymous health inspection. The inspector, seeing the footage, was furious. "This is criminal harassment," he said, promising to report Romano's actions. Throughout these weeks, the rift with my family deepened. Mom occasionally visited, always when Dad was busy elsewhere, bringing small gifts and tearful pleas to reconcile. Amelia sent passive-aggressive texts about family loyalty, while sharing nothing about her new position, a subject that once would have dominated every conversation. After a month of ignoring my existence, Amelia finally came to the bakery late one evening. I was experimenting with new recipes in the kitchen when the bell chimed. "We're closed," I called out, not looking up. "Even for family," Amelia asked, her voice lacking its usual confidence. I emerged from the kitchen to find her standing awkwardly by the door, looking around at the bakery with new eyes. "What do you want, Amelia?" "To talk. Actually talk, without Dad's opinions drowning everything out." She sat at a table, clearly expecting me to join. After a moment's hesitation, I did. "I saw the article in Chicago Food Monthly," she said. "They called you a rising star in the culinary scene. It made me realize I know nothing about what you actually do here." "You never asked," I pointed out. "I know." She looked down at her perfectly manicured hands. "I've been thinking a lot since the opening disaster, about how I never had to fight for attention or approval the way you did, about how easy it was to accept Dad's narrative that your passion wasn't valuable." Her candor surprised me. "Are you apologizing?" "I'm trying to understand," she clarified. Dad's been impossible since you rejected his offer. He rages about ingratitude 1 minute and worries about you failing the next. It's exhausting. So this visit is about making your life easier. No, she looked genuinely distressed. It's about, I've always been jealous of you, Benito. Jealous of me? I laughed incredulously. Golden child Amelia, jealous of the disappointing son. Yes, she said simply. You've always known exactly what you wanted. You have passion, real passion, not just ambition. Do you know how rare that is? I climbed the corporate ladder because it was expected, because I'm good at it, because it makes Dad proud. But you, are you built this? She gestured around the bakery, because it's what you love. That takes courage I've never had. The confession hung between us, reshaping decades of assumed dynamics. For the first time, I saw my sister not as my rival for parental approval, but as someone trapped in her own expectations' prison. I don't know how to fix this, she finally said, but I'd like to try. While not an immediate solution, the conversation marked a turning point. Amelia began using her marketing expertise to subtly promote sweet heritage within her corporate network, leading to several large catering orders. The bakery's reputation continued to grow. Local coffee shops began requesting wholesale orders of my pastries. The Neighborhood Business Association invited me to cater their monthly meetings. Even Vincent Romano's attempts at sabotage backfired when his customers, curious about the controversy, visited Sweet Heritage and became regulars. Through it all, Eliza remained a constant support our professional relationship, gradually warming into something more personal. She understood the demands of building something from nothing, often bringing dinner to the bakery during my late recipe development sessions. 3 months after opening, Vincent made me an unexpected offer. He wanted to buy Sweet Heritage for 3 times what I'd invested. You've built quite a name in a short time, he said grudgingly. I'd keep your recipes, your brand. You'd walk away with a significant profit. The offer was tempting, especially as a vindication I could show my father. Proof that my little bakery project had real substantial value. But when I mentioned it to Eliza over coffee the next morning, her response was immediate. Is that what you want? To cash out and walk away from something you've poured your heart into? No, I admitted. But the validation would be hollow, she finished. Because it would still be about your father's approval, just in a different form. She was right, of course. Instead of selling, I began planning an expansion. A small teaching kitchen where I could offer more workshops and classes, sharing the baking traditions my grandfather had passed to me. The following weekend, I participated in a regional baking competition, entering my signature Abuelo's Concha. The event drew professional and amateur bakers from across the Midwest, many with years more experience and formal training. When they announced Sweet Heritage Bakery as the winner, I almost couldn't process it. The judges praised the perfect balance of innovation and tradition, and the clear expression of cultural heritage through masterful technique. What I didn't know until later was that my father had watched the entire competition from the back of the venue, slipping out before I could spot him. A week after the competition, the local morning show Chicago Today featured a segment on Sweet Heritage. The producer had been captivated by the story of my grandfather's influence and the family recipes I'd modernized. The 5-minute spot showcased the bakery, demonstrated my concha-making technique, and briefly mentioned the competition win. The host asked about my background and training, giving me the opportunity to honor Grandpa Alberto's legacy publicly. That afternoon, Amelia called. Dad watched your TV segment, she said, without preamble. He recorded it. Why, I asked, genuinely confused. I think, she hesitated. I think he's realizing he might have been wrong about you, about the bakery. I didn't know how to respond to that. Years of dismissal and recent abandonment couldn't be erased by one moment of potential pride. The next day, Amelia visited the bakery unannounced. I want to help, she said. Properly help with marketing strategy, not just throwing you a few catering jobs. No strings, no dad's influence. Just sister to brother. Her offer felt like the first genuine bridge across the family divide. I accepted cautiously, and together we developed a comprehensive marketing plan that honored Sweet Heritage's roots while expanding its reach. That evening, as I was teaching Eliza how to make cinnamon sugar churros, our sixth definitely not a date cooking lesson, I realized something profound. The validation I'd sought from my family for so long had never been necessary. I'd built something meaningful despite their absence, not because of their approval. "What are you thinking?" Eliza asked, noticing my distraction. "That success is the best revenge," I said. "But it's even better when success means doing what you love surrounded by people who actually support you." She smiled, dusting cinnamon sugar from her hands. "Does that include me?" "Especially you," I said, kissing her for the first time, amid the sweet scent of freshly fried churros. 6 months after opening day, Sweet Heritage had transformed from a risky new business into a neighborhood institution. Mornings brought lines of regulars who knew me by name, afternoons filled with tourists guided by glowing reviews and food blogs, and evenings saw baking classes and private events that had become coveted local experiences. The financial stability I'd fought for finally materialized. After months of scraping, by reinvesting every dollar of profit, I could finally pay myself a modest but consistent salary. I expanded from 2 part-time employees to 5, including a junior baker I was training in my techniques. One Tuesday morning, Mom visited unannounced. She'd been making these clandestine visits more frequently, always when Dad was busy at the restaurant. "Mijo," she said, surveying the bustling bakery with obvious pride. "Look what you've created." For once, there was no mention of reconciliation with Dad, no subtle pressure to give in for family harmony. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and asked, "Need help with anything?" I showed her how to fill and shape the tres leches croissants, watching as her experienced hands quickly mastered the technique. We worked side by side in comfortable silence, occasionally sharing memories of Grandpa Alberto or laughing about my early baking disasters. "He would be so proud," she said, softly gesturing around the bakery. "This is exactly what he imagined for you." As she prepared to leave, I impulsively packed a box with her favorite pastries. "Come back tomorrow," I suggested. "These cinnamon rolls need an expert opinion." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'll be here." These quiet reconciliation moments with Mom became a weekly tradition, gradually healing wounds without requiring grand gestures or formal apologies. Sweet Heritage's wholesale business expanded rapidly as local coffee shops clamored for my pastries. What began with one small account grew to 7 steady clients requiring dedicated production shifts. The predictable income stabilized the business, creating a buffer against slow retail days. The watershed moment came when Chicago Community Foundation approached me about catering their annual fundraising gala, a prestigious event typically reserved for established caterers with years of reputation building. "We want something different this year," the organizer explained. "Your Mexican-American fusion pastries tell exactly the kind of cultural celebration story our diversity initiative is promoting." The event would be my largest order ever. Pastries for 500 guests, including custom desserts featuring the foundation's logo. The exposure and fee were significant, but so was the risk. One misstep on this scale could damage the reputation I'd carefully built. I accepted the challenge, planning production schedules, with military precision testing scaled-up versions of recipes and renting additional equipment for the massive baking operation. Marcus took time off work to help Eliza manage logistics, and even Amelia stepped in to coordinate delivery and setup details. 2 days after confirming the gala contract, Vincent Romano appeared at my counter, expression uncharacteristically restrained. "We should talk privately," he said, nodding toward the office. Once seated, he placed a folded document on the desk between us. "I'm prepared to offer $300,000 to purchase Sweet Heritage. Full ownership transfer, immediate payment." The figure, nearly triple his previous offer, momentarily stole my breath. "Why now?" I managed. "The Chicago market is changing," he said diplomatically. "Your approach has proven more viable than I anticipated. I'd rather incorporate your brand than compete against it." The offer was tempting on multiple levels. Beyond the financial windfall, it represented definitive proof of my success. Evidence I could show my father that my little bakery project had become something valuable enough for an established competitor to want to acquire. "I'll need time to consider," I said, neither accepting nor rejecting outright. That evening, I shared the offer with Eliza over dinner at her apartment. Our relationship had deepened over the months, evolving from business ally to trusted confidant to something increasingly serious. "It's a lot of money," she acknowledged. "But would selling satisfy what you really want?" "I'm not sure what I want anymore," I admitted. "When I started, it was about proving my father wrong, honoring Grandpa's legacy, creating something meaningful. Now, she prompted. Now I wonder if taking this offer might give me freedom to start something new without the weight of family expectations, a fresh beginning." She considered this thoughtfully. "Before you decide, ask yourself, are you running toward something or away from something? Because one leads to growth, the other just changes the scenery while bringing all the same baggage." Her insight cut through my rationalizations. The truth was, selling would be an escape rather than an evolution. It would validate my worth in financial terms but abandon the soul of what Grandpa Alberto had inspired. The next morning I declined Vincent's offer. Instead of selling, I expanded. The vacant storage room adjacent to the bakery became a dedicated teaching space where I launched Heritage Baking Academy, weekend workshops teaching traditional Mexican baking techniques. The classes filled immediately, creating another revenue stream and deepening community connections. The Chicago Community Foundation Gala proved transformative. My team executed flawlessly, earning enthusiastic praise from attendees including influential restaurateurs, hotel managers, and event planners. Within a week, I had inquiries about regular hotel pastry contracts and exclusive event catering. The business had indisputably succeeded, yet the family wound remained partially open. Mom had returned to my life. Amelia and I had forged a new sibling relationship built on mutual respect rather than competition. But Dad remained conspicuously absent, a shadow presence I heard about only through others. 8 months after opening, Chicago Magazine featured Sweet Heritage in their Redefining Chicago Cuisine issue. The 4-page spread included professional photos of the bakery, my signature creations, and a personal profile emphasizing my grandfather's influence and my journey to entrepreneurship. The morning the magazine hit newsstands, I received an unexpected call from Richard Thompson, the bank manager, who had reluctantly approved my initial loan. "Congratulations on the feature," he said. "I've been following your progress with interest. Your loan payments have been impeccable and your business growth is impressive. We'd like to discuss refinancing options that could save you considerable interest." The same bank that had initially dismissed my business plan as too risky now courted me as a success story. The irony wasn't lost on me. Landlord Harold, once skeptical of my chances, stopped by with a surprising proposal. "The corner space in the building is opening up next month, twice the size of your current location. I thought you might want first right of refusal before I list it." "I can't afford double rent," I said, though the idea of expansion was tempting. "We could work something out," he offered. "Maybe a gradual increase structure. You've been good for the building, Martinez. Brought in foot traffic class of customer that benefits everyone on the block. I'd prefer keeping you around." From reluctant chance giver to advocate, another relationship transformed by persistent proof of commitment. As Sweet Heritage approached its 1-year anniversary, I began planning a celebration. Not just a business milestone, but a thank you to everyone who had supported the journey. Customers, employees, vendors, neighbors, and the small circle of people who had believed from the beginning. While finalizing the guest list, Amelia visited the bakery after closing, unusually hesitant. "Dad asked about the anniversary party," she said. "He saw the announcement on the bakery's Instagram." My chest tightened, and he asked if he'd be welcome. She studied my expression carefully. "I told him I'd ask you." The question hung between us, heavy with a year's worth of hurt and absence. "What do you think I should say?" I asked. "I think," she said slowly, "that he's finally realized what you've built here is real and important, and that he might have been catastrophically wrong." "He told you this?" "Not in those words. You know, Dad. But he's been different lately. Quieter. He has the magazine article framed in his office." That detail stunned me. "He framed it." She nodded. "Behind his desk where clients can see it. He tells them about his son, the award-winning baker. It's Strange, honestly. Strange how, like he's trying to take credit somehow. Like your success reflects on him. She paused, but also like he's genuinely proud. The complexity of emotions this revelation triggered: anger, vindication, lingering hurt, and a small, stubborn flicker of hope for reconciliation, left me momentarily speechless. "I'll think about it," I finally said. That night, lying awake beside a sleeping Eliza, I reflected on the journey of the past year. From abandoned opening to thriving business, from family rejection to community, embrace from self-doubt to confident purpose, every step had transformed me alongside my bakery. The question wasn't really whether to invite Dad to the anniversary celebration. The question was whether I was secure enough in my own success to face him without needing his approval anymore. Whether I could stand in my accomplishment surrounded by the community that had embraced Sweet Heritage and see him as just one person among many, not the arbiter of my worth. By morning I knew my answer. "Yes," I told Amelia when she called. "Tell Dad he's welcome to come, but make sure he understands this isn't about him. It's about what I've built with or without his support." As the anniversary approached, Sweet Heritage had undeniably succeeded beyond even my optimistic projections. But more important than the financial stability or professional recognition was the realization that I'd created something meaningful, a business that honored heritage while embracing innovation, a community gathering place that celebrated craft and connection, and most importantly, a path that was authentically mine, regardless of family validation. The morning of Sweet Heritage's one-year anniversary began like most days: early alarm, quiet bakery, the meditative process of mixing doughs and preparing fillings. Except today, anticipation hummed beneath every motion. Not nervousness exactly, but awareness that this milestone marked something profound. I'd been so focused on the evening celebration that I barely registered the knock at the front door. Thinking it was a delivery, I wiped flour-covered hands on my apron and went to answer. My father stood there, hands in pockets, looking smaller somehow than I remembered. "You're not open yet," he said, stating the obvious. "No." I didn't move to let him in. I thought. He shifted uncomfortably. "Maybe we could talk before tonight's event." After a moment's hesitation, I stepped aside. He entered cautiously, as if walking into unfamiliar territory rather than his son's business. "Coffee?" I offered, more from ingrained hospitality than genuine welcome. He nodded, following me to the small table nearest the kitchen. We sat in awkward silence while the espresso machine hissed and gurgled. "The place looks good," he finally said. "Professional." "It is professional," I replied. "It's a professional bakery." He accepted the coffee with a nod of thanks. "Amelia tells me you're doing well. Financially, I mean." "We are." More silence. I'd imagined this moment countless times over the past year, sometimes with shouting, sometimes with tearful apologies, sometimes with cool dismissal. Never with this strange, stilted attempt at normal conversation. "I saw your magazine feature," he continued. "Very impressive." "So I heard. Amelia said you framed it." He looked mildly embarrassed. "Yes, well, it's good publicity for you." "Why are you here, Dad?" I finally asked. "Really?" He stared into his coffee cup as if it contained the script he needed. "I'm not good at this, Benito." "At what?" Admitting I was wrong. The words seemed physically painful for him to push out. I said nothing, waiting. "When you were born," he continued hesitantly, "I promised myself you would never struggle like I did. My father, your grandfather Miguel, he never believed in my restaurant, called it a foolish dream, said I should keep my stable factory job, not risk everything on a business likely to fail." This was new information. Dad rarely spoke about his father, who had died before I was born. "Every step of the way he predicted my failure," Dad continued. "When I got the loan, when I found the location, when I opened the doors, always waiting for me to crash and burn so he could say, 'I told you so.'" He took a sip of coffee, gathering himself. "When you started talking about a bakery, all I could hear was my father's voice in my head, all the doubts, all the predictions of failure. And I became him. the very thing I swore I'd never do. The revelation shifted something in my understanding of the past year, not erasing the hurt, but contextualizing it in a generational pattern I hadn't recognized. I was afraid for you, he admitted. Afraid you'd fail and be devastated. Afraid you'd succeed and not need me anymore. Afraid of watching you struggle through the same challenges I faced. It was easier to dismiss your dream than to support it and risk watching it crumble. So you chose not to show up at all, I said, the hurt still fresh. I chose wrongly. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. Your grandfather Alberto had more faith in you than I did. He saw what I couldn't, or wouldn't, see. The mention of Grandpa Alberto brought a lump to my throat. He believed in me, I said simply. He was right to. Dad gestured around the bakery. You've built something real here, son. Something lasting. Something significant. Coming from him, these words carried weight I hadn't expected to still matter. Despite everything, some childish part of me had continued seeking his approval. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued, but I hoped maybe we could start finding a way forward, as business owners, as men, eventually perhaps as father and son again. His vulnerability, so uncharacteristic, so clearly difficult, disarmed my practiced indifference. I needed you, I said quietly, not just at the opening, for years before that. I know, he nodded. I failed you in that. I can't change the past. I can only ask if there's a path forward. We talked for nearly 2 hours, the bakery prep forgotten. He shared stories I'd never heard about his early struggles with the restaurant, the times he nearly lost everything, the harsh lessons of entrepreneurship. I described the journey of the past year, the triumphs and challenges he'd missed by choice. We didn't solve everything. Years of hurt don't dissolve in a single conversation, but we established boundaries and possibilities. He would respect my business autonomy. I would consider his experience-based advice without obligation to follow it. We would attempt family dinners again, this time with new ground rules about support and recognition. I should let you get back to work, he said, eventually rising. Thank you for listening, at least. At the door, he paused. I am proud of you, Benito. I should have said that long ago. The words I'd once desperately craved now felt like a gift I no longer required to validate my worth, but appreciated nonetheless. That evening, Sweet Heritage's anniversary celebration exceeded my every expectation. The bakery overflowed with customers, business partners, neighbors, and friends. Sophia Reynolds brought her foodie followers. Landlord Harold chatted with banker Richard Thompson about property values and business development. Eliza managed the event flawlessly, occasionally catching my eye with private smiles that promised a future beyond business success. Mom beamed with uncomplicated pride, helping serve refreshments and telling anyone who would listen. My son created all these recipes himself. Dad attended with Amelia, standing somewhat awkwardly at first, but gradually engaging with guests who recognized him from his restaurant. I watched him carefully correct someone who called Sweet Heritage his son's little bakery. Nothing little about it, he said firmly. Benito has built one of the most innovative bakeries in Chicago. The evening's highlight came when I gathered everyone for a toast. Standing beside the display case where it all began, I raised my glass. 1 year ago today, I opened these doors with nothing but recipes, determination, and my grandfather's belief in me. Along the way, I've learned that success isn't just measured in profit margins or magazine features. It's measured in the community you build, the traditions you honor, and the authenticity you maintain. I acknowledged each person who had contributed to the journey. Marcus's unfailing friendship, Eliza's marketing brilliance and personal support, Sophia's influential review, the staff's dedication, the customers' loyalty. And to my family, I continued meeting first Mom's teary eyes, then Amelia's proud smile, and finally Dad's cautious gaze. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes the most important ingredient in pursuing a dream is the strength to believe in it even when others don't, and that it's never too late to rebuild what seems broken. After the celebration, a new tradition emerged. Sunday morning family breakfasts at Sweet Heritage before opening hours. Mom would help with prep, Dad would reluctantly don an apron to learn basics, and Amelia would manage our growing social media presence while sampling new recipes. These gatherings weren't perfect. Old tensions occasionally resurfaced. Dad sometimes slipped into criticism disguised as advice. But each week improved on the last, building a new family dynamic based on mutual respect rather than conditional approval. 6 months after the anniversary, I launched a new community initiative, baking classes for neighborhood children, with a scholarship program named after Grandpa Alberto for students who couldn't afford the fees. Teaching these classes became my greatest joy, watching young faces light up with the same passion that had captured me at their age. My relationship with Eliza deepened beyond business partnership into something solid and nurturing. Her marketing expertise had helped Sweet Heritage expand thoughtfully, while my creativity challenged her corporate-trained thinking. We balanced each other in ways that made both stronger. The bakery continued thriving, but success now felt like a byproduct rather than the goal itself. The true achievement was creating a space that honored heritage while building community, a place where tradition and innovation coexisted beautifully, much like the cultural fusion in my recipes. As for Dad and me, we established a cautious peace that gradually warmed into genuine relationship. He never became the effusively supportive father of childhood fantasies, but he became something perhaps more valuable, a fellow entrepreneur who respected my path, even when it differed from his own. On the second anniversary of Sweet Heritage, I stood before closing, surveying the space that had transformed my life. The bakery cases emptied after another successful day, the tables where countless conversations had unfolded, the kitchen where my grandfather's legacy lived on through recipes both traditional and reimagined. The greatest lesson of these 2 years wasn't about baking techniques or business strategies. It was about building your own table when you're not offered a seat at another's, about finding the courage to pursue passion even without a safety net of family approval, about creating your own definition of success rather than inheriting someone else's. Heritage, I realized, isn't just what we inherit, it's what we create and pass forward. My grandfather understood this when he taught a small boy to feel the life in dough. I understood it now, as Sweet Heritage became not just my dream realized, but a new tradition in the making. Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own dreams? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found something meaningful in my journey. Subscribe for more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need encouragement to follow their passion even when others don't. Understand. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. Sometimes the family we choose supports us more than the family we're born into, and I'm grateful you've chosen to be part of mine today.